And you're very welcome to this morning's Signpost webinar. My name is Pat Murphy, Head of Environment Knowledge Transfer with Teagasc. This series is brought to you in conjunction with the National Rural Network, Food, Drink Ireland, SkillNet, and Dairy Sustainability Ireland. You're all very welcome on here in the southeast anyway. A glorious morning brings in mind the notion of going to the beach. And in the last week, the EPA brought out their bathing waters report, and it was a very positive report. But today, I think we'll be dealing with maybe some of the issues behind the blue flag beaches, and in particular, one project. And welcome Eoin Kinsella from the Duncannon Blue Flag Farming and Community Scheme located in Duncannon, County Wexford. Eoin, if you switch on your video and you're unmute yourself there. Eoin, you're very welcome.
Thanks very much, Pat. Great to be here.
Yeah, you might just give us a little bit of an insight into the Duncannon Blue Flag Farming and Community Scheme. Just what is it and what are the aims of it?
So the Duncannon Blue Flag Farming Community Scheme is a European Innovation Partnership project. We received funding in 2018 from the Department of Agriculture, which was through the EIP under the Rural Development Programme. I guess the reason, I will cover more in detail, the reason behind it was Duncannon lost its blue flag in 2007, and we had multiple pressures in the area, not just farming. There was 4 to 5 different pressures kind of coming from that catchment alone. And the whole background behind the EIP project was to lower the bacterial levels into 2 streams that flow onto Duncannon Beach.
Okay. We're also joined by Noel Meehan. Noel will be helping with questions later on. And just to remind you, if you have questions, just use the Q&A. So Eoin, if you're ready with your presentation, you can share with us and fire ahead.
Thanks very much, Pat. Hope everybody can see that and can hear me all right now at this stage.
Yeah, it's good.
So good morning, everybody. It's great to be here, as I said to Pat, and I suppose the sunny southeast, it's a great day to head to the beach. But as I said, I'm going to talk about the EIP project and the pressure surrounding our local beaches today, not just in Wexford, but I'm sure every beach around the coast of Ireland has its own pressures. So just a little bit of a background on Duncannon Beach. Duncannon Beach, it's not like any other beach, I guess, in Wexford or Ireland. It forms part of the River Barrow and Nore SSE, which is situated down in Waterford Harbour Estuary. It was part of a designated bathing water and shellfish water area. Any coastal area, and especially Duncannon being based on the Hookhead Peninsula, there's a thrive there, I suppose, for tourism and the economy. And it's I suppose, being a rural village, a rural seaside village, it's very dependent on its summer residents and the people who come to that beach. As I said, it lost its blue flag in 2007. So we're pushing on there for 15 years without a blue flag. There's 4 main pressures. One of the main pressures is the 2 streams, and you can see them on the photo here to your left, just there by Duncannon Beach Holiday Park. 2 streams that flow onto the beach. That's one of the pressures, and that's the pressure that the EIP project has looked at. The other 3 pressures, Duncannon, every village in Ireland has surface water pipes. So we monitor those pipes during the bathing water season for any contamination, that type of thing. So that's the second pressure. Our third pressure would be, and many of you know, Wexford has probably 4 villages or coastal villages that has no wastewater treatment plant available to them. So anything that's generated in the waste or septic tank, or not septic tank, but anything that's on a main sewer is actually a sea outfall, basically. So Duncannon, Ballyhack and Arthurstown, they're the two villages that are upstream of Duncannon. They've no wastewater treatment plant, and I'll discuss this later. The fourth and final pressure, and we're only starting to, well, we are seeing this, the fourth and final pressure is upstream along the Barrow, the Nore and the Shore. That's our final pressure. So when you think about the pressure that's coming downstream, there's a lot at stake, and there's a lot of bacterial issues upstream as well. So investigations prior to the EIP, Wexford Local Authority, the environment section here, would have carried out inspections in 2016 and 2017. There were 16 farmyard inspections carried out, and we had 3 direct discharges. But as I mentioned earlier, the domestic wastewater side, so these are your septic tanks in rural areas. There was 40 septic tank inspections carried out. 16 of these failed, and 6 were directly discharging to either the Corrickmore or the small stream. So as I mentioned, there was limitations to these inspections. They were a top-down approach, but when we think about an inspection, it's only a snapshot in time. So we weren't addressing management, the everyday going on kind of in farmyards. So there were the multiple different pressures that we were seeing within the catchment. And this is why we looked at the Duncannon Blue Flag Farming and Community Scheme as an EIP. We applied in 2017 and we were successful to run a 3-year project. We received funding from the Department of Agriculture to the tune of 550,000 to run this 3-year project. And I guess most recently, we're wondering if we started in 18, we should be finished in 2021. But we applied for an extension and we were delighted to receive a 12-month extension from the locally led section in the department. These are just the main aims of the project. So it's important to mention that we do have Duncannon Beach, but the EIP project is actually focusing on the 2 rivers that flow onto Duncannon Beach. So what we were trying to do is restore, protect, and enhance the water quality in those 2 streams, and try and develop an effective model for future catchments. Like this project, I suppose, it's been talked about quite a lot, and the approach. Wexford Local Authority are the only local authority involved in, I guess, as a lead partner in an EIP project of all 50 or over 50 EIPs in Ireland now. Third one was to foster that positive relationship between farmers. So I guess it comes back to the finger pointing, the blame game, that type of thing. And that's what we're trying to do, just create that bit more of a positive relationship that, look at, we're all the problem, but we can all get together and collaborate and be the solution. I won't dwell too much. Our operation group consists of 17 people. I guess the main area here will be the advisory service, both in Teagasc and Jeff Barry Agricultural Consultants. We have our local Teagasc advisory office down in Johnstown Castle, where we have a number of advisors on board, as well as the Teagasc research team. On the Glanbia and Board Bia side, we found the sustainability, there was a drive there from those areas in relation to the environment and going forward, I guess. So it's great to have these on board. And then I guess our local farmer and their IFA rep was James E. Wallace, and he is a great addition. He's able to get through to farmers at the start of this project very well. The catchment area itself, it's very similar to any of the agricultural catchments program. It's about 1,400 hectares in size, so just a little under 3,500 acres. You can see on the map here, there's the Corrickmore 10, which predominantly takes up approximately 15 kilometers of water course. And then we have the small stream as well, just below, kind of flowing midway along Duncannon Beach. There's 41 eligible farmers in that area, predominantly free draining soils. There are pockets of more poor draining, heavier soils. And we'll mention that Ramsgrange Village, it's in the northwest of the catchment as well. And this is another pressure that the Corrickmore sees on a daily basis. So just getting in on the results-based reward scheme, most EIP projects offer a results-based reward. Ours is no different. We work on the basis of pollution potential zones, and our payment is based on risk. So the farmer might have a number of PPZs on a farmyard or on the land, and then we base it on results then. And this is how we acknowledge at the end of the year their payment by carrying out a survey, and we give that farmer a red, a yellow, or a green, and it does come back to management as well. So this is just, again, a lot of EIP projects have scorecards, and ours is no different. We keep it simple. I guess keeping it simple to the farmer, getting that message across, the reason why they're falling into a red, a yellow, or a green, and then the recommendation. So you can see this very quickly. This farmer, he has farmyard manure storage, but there was no effluent channel in front of the sheds. So just basically was an effluent channel to be constructed outside of the shed. So you can see condition and assessment and management assessment were two of the key drivers between a farmer's payment, and that dropped them into an overall farm PPZ status then. So this farmer here would be falling into a red, but if he was to construct that effluent channel, he'd get up to a yellow. So today, our application period began in May 2019. We met all the farmers individually, and to date we have 35 farmers on board. It's a catchment that has a drive for dry stock. We've a lot of calf to beef farmers down there, a number of sheep farmers, and I suppose on the dairy side then we've 4 dairy farmers on board and 8 tillage. Them 35 farmers represent just over 975 hectares. The most interesting thing during the application period that we saw was 70% of these farmers were in gloss. So there was that level of environmental awareness. There wasn't a level of, I guess, a drive maybe to do a little bit more for the environment. So just to dwell on our water protection improvement works, as I mentioned on our PPZ survey, our measures, we stayed outside the farmyard, and this was to do with, I suppose, the nitrates directive compliance within the farmyards. So a lot of our measures were just outside the farmyard or on the land. To date, we're very happy with how we started. We started very simply by fencing all our water courses, our drinking points. We had a large number of drinking points, cattle access points around the catchment, approximately 13, 14 drinking points. In 2019, we moved a lot of water trucks in excess of the 20-meter buffer zone, and these are all regulations now for under the new NAP for derogation farmers. So they were happy to do this work and see how they got on. Soil sampling and NMP, as I said, 70% of the farmers were in gloss, but there were a number of farmers without an NMP, without knowing where they were falling in relation to P, K, lime status. And this is something we looked at, and we granted this work to be done. So we soil sampled for the farmers, and we gave them a nutrient management plan. Buffer zones, we hold a buffer zone all year round for organic manure application of 10 meters. So we don't slot into that 10 meter in the shoulders of the year. We don't hold a 5-meter buffer. So a lot of the farmers adhere to the 10-meter buffer. Sediment traps, we can look at one of them now in the next slide. We've installed a number of sediment traps for both roadways, just outside farmyards on maybe grey water areas. And we also looked at farm roadways and I suppose restructuring farm roads in the area. We have a number of farmers using less. We don't grant aid for less, but we do always advise farmers to use low emission slurry spreading. The riparian zones then is another one. This just down the bottom right corner. One of our farmers had sown this prior to this, and this gave us the idea of, well, we can look at this as well. We can. And I'll discuss this in a little while as well. So that was one of our actions where we were able to sow willow and alder. Hedgerow planting was another action available to farmers, and we planted about 1.2 kilometers of arable grass margins, and a lot of these measures were the right measure in the right place. And I guess this came back to the development of the PIP maps by the EPA. There was no real fine line, and there still is no fine line of what the EIP project done. Once I built up that relationship with farmers, everything was discussed. Our biggest, I suppose, win to date on the no fine line, I suppose, measures is our text alert system. So we set up a text alert system with all the farmers to acknowledge them of heavy rainfall coming in the next 48 to 72 hours. So farmers were able to plan that. But everything was discussed. We had storage requirements, where storage going in the next maybe 3-4 years, where they are at the moment, how they can actually improve their storage. We discussed water quality. A lot of farmers come to me every day, like, and say, look at how's the stream down below here, how's the stream on the out farm. Reseeding is a big thing. Farmyard design was a major, I suppose, talk on the farm when we were discussing the PPZ survey. Hedgerow options, species, that type of thing. And I guess most recently we've had an uptake of organic farmers in the area, but I guess multi-species swards is a growing option down in Duncannon. We probably have about in the region of 150 acres planted now of multi-species swards, and that number is growing. And we also discuss native woodland planting in poorer areas. We can't, as I said, it's the Duncannon Blue Flag Farming and Community Scheme. Community engagement plays a big role here down Duncannon Beach. We have 3 local primary schools within the catchment. We've one large secondary school as well. So this is where we find engagement great. We find it very thorough as well. Just getting students out onto, you can see in the picture there, we picked 21 bags of litter off Duncannon and Ballystraw Beach there in the space of 2 to 3 hours. So that's kind of where you get students more aware of their local water environment and what they can do to help. We engage with both the Tidy Towns groups and the Village Renewal in the area. Every year we carry out, we engage with Karen Dubsky, with Coastwatch, and we bring a number of students, Tidy Town groups, down to the beach to carry out their Coastwatch survey. Delighted to say today that we've been successful in our LawPro's Community Water Development Fund for 2022. We've received grant funding there to carry out a 2-day training course with anybody in the area, whether you're a student, whether you're a farmer, you could be a local councillor. So we're looking forward to carrying out that in June, and we'll have our local ecologist on board. And we can't forget LawPro and IFI. Fran Igo from LawPro and Declan Cullen from IFI recently visited Duncannon National School to carry out kind of, I suppose, a little field trip to a local water course. So it's a fun way of getting the younger kids involved. Like they're keen to learn at that age as well. And we'll be always engaging with the catchments unit in the EPA through PIP maps, liaison with kind of developments in the EIP project. Picture on the right hand side, this was our recent measure that we carried out, as I said before, the riparian native streamside planting. We got in touch with Seal Rescue Ireland. They're a very small organisation or a charity based in North Wexford up in Coretown, and I met with a number of the volunteers during the day, and God, they're a very keen charity to see this kind of project going on, and it was great to get them down. And we kind of liaised with Ramsgrange, Tidy Towns and Seal Rescue Ireland and we planted just over 500 trees between the two groups. And Sea Rescue Ireland, they see the benefit when it comes to tree planting along stream sides. We can't forget the National Inspection Plan. So, as I said, Wexford Local Authority carry out a number of septic tank inspections every year. Under the National Inspection Plan, then, at the start of the year, we plan a number of septic tank inspections in the area. To date, we've carried out just over 120 inspections in the catchment. And so it's just a little, probably about 60% of houses. And it was kind of a main driver as well to focus on not just farm surveys, but let's look at the septic tanks as well and see where they are. So our stream water quality, that's just a map of the catchment again. You can see there are our 12 monitoring sites throughout the year. We look at a number of parameters between 4 and 6 times a year. We do take stormwater samples as well, but there are set monitoring points throughout the year. We do take samples outside those areas as well. Our main focus is E. coli and enterococci, just for the bathing water status, I guess, and the parameters that surround a lot of beach closures during the year. I guess to move on, as I said before, our focus was the two streams on Duncannon Beach, are flowing onto Duncannon Beach. Since the project has started, and I guess let's not let the heads drop, our bathing water status has actually gone the other way. Bathing water statuses are on an average of 3 years. So this start kind of turning the heads of, right, okay, I think we fixed the issue of the two streams flowing onto Duncannon Beach. Where are the other pressures? We've seen a major advancement in the quality, the bacterial quality of the catchment in the last probably 12 months. But I guess a good way to focus on how the long-term assessment is looking is by ecology. We employ, I suppose we get in Aquins Limited, Dr. Jan Robert Bars comes down every year to us to carry out an assessment at 6 different sites. And you can see there our Q values are improving. There are a number of sites that are kind of staying the same, but we know there are maybe issues there with a septic tank maybe, or a discharge point or something like that. But overall, it's a good way to look at the long-term view of the water quality within the catchment. Just moving on, as I said, Duncannon, Ballyhack and Arterstown don't have any water treatment facility to date, but Irish Water, in conjunction with Wexford County Council, have started construction last year on a new state-of-the-art wastewater treatment plant based in Arterstown. This is a €12.5 million investment, and it will serve the village of Ballyhack, Arterstown and Duncannon. In 2020, this was it was announced by Irish Water that there was a major delay going to be seen in the development or the construction of it, but I think it was soon realised that the work that the EIP project was doing, the data that we had on file for water quality, the importance of Water Harbour Estuary being a PAA, being an SAC and SPA, I think it was soon realised that, right, this needs to be jumped up as a priority. And we were absolutely delighted to see him hit the ground a couple of months ago. So CISC are the contractors that are awarded that. That's just an overview. That's probably in the last week or two. That wastewater treatment plant will be up and running by October this year. So there's great advancement there. So second last slide, I think. So I suppose the expected returns, the results and the performance, we are seeing a reduction in bacterial pollution with engagement with farmers, with engagement with houses, with engagement with community groups. The improvement in ecological quality is there. We have the data Our Q values are improving every year. The EIP project was all about innovation. It wasn't just about to fulfill the nitrates directive. It was all about going above the nitrates directive. And that's what our farmers have done. They've complied, they're gone above compliance, they're putting in sediment traps, they're slowing their flows, I suppose, in many of our areas that we see runoff. We've seen a lot of efficiencies, as I mentioned, a lot of farmers looking at less technology now on catchment farms. We see a lot more efficiencies in relation to reseeding, creating that better return on farmers. And in relation then to the reduction in septic tank failures, we're getting there. It's going to take another maybe 4 or 5 years to look at all septic tanks in the area. As I said, there's 220 houses there. And this really all pulls back to those people living in the Duncannon, Ballyhack, Ramsgrange, and Arthurstown area to just gain a little bit of local ownership, a little bit of responsibility, and just appreciate their local environment that bit more. And this can be all done. This is it's just creating awareness programs. It's just about educating not just the farmers. It's about educating schools. It's about driving that message home from a primary school or a secondary school to their parents to say, how's our septic tank looking? The learnings to date, I guess one of the key learnings is the role of the project manager. I guess it's something for every local authority maybe to look at, the role of an agricultural scientist within a catchment. It's that full-time relationship between the farmer, between the community group, between that house. That was the big push, I suppose. I think the foundation of the EIP project has been back to the advisors. Without that advisor to farmer relationship, I don't think we would have got the number of farmers on board. So the buy-in through the advisor was key. When it comes to bacterial levels, reducing bacterial levels, I think management is key. That's one thing we've learned. Management of livestock manures, management of when am I going to spread my slurry, when am I going to spread my dung, where am I going to store my dung during the open season, I guess. But then it comes back to the management of your wastewater treatment plant. Moving on to the existing pressures, the pressures that are, we're always going to have pressures, we're always going to have losses within a catchment. And I think it's probably a window opener for a lot of local authorities upstream of Duncannon to look at maybe measures that can be put in place by farmers. And this comes back to your advisor, your ASSAP program, the data being collated by LawPro or WFD monitoring. So it's about kind of getting the right measure in the right place upstream as well. And I think we've developed an effective model that we don't need to do big things to change water quality. Collaboration as a community, and when I say collaboration, and I've said this umpteen times here now, that it's about collaboration, it's about educating, it's about creating awareness, not just within a farming community, but the wider community. It's about those people getting on with a solution rather than the finger pointing as a community, I guess, to fix the problem. The last question then is, what does the future hold for the catchment of Duncannon? It is a big question to be asked. There's been a lot of money spent down here. There's been a lot of work done down here. We've had a lot of investment, big investment by farmers and by houses. Your typical, whether it's a slatted tank, you could be looking at 40 to 50,000. Whether it's a septic tank, it's 12, 13, 14,000. So we've had a lot of money, but the question really dwells is the future, and there are a few things we're looking at in relation to maybe setting up a Duncannon Blue Flag committee. maintain those text alert systems. And this comes back to maybe getting a number of farmers, getting a Tidy Towns group person on board, and just maybe meeting twice, 3 times a year. But I guess it'll come back to the local authority to, I suppose, continue to collaborate with this type of catchment. So that's it. Thanks very much. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, Eoin, if you stop sharing there. Thanks very much. That was great. I suppose just a reminder, people, if you could submit your questions on the questions and answers, and there's a number of questions coming in there. I suppose the one message that I'm kind of taking from your presentation is that it's a combination of the implementation and the follow-up on regulation, and then engaging with the community, both as important as the other in terms of the way forward for water quality in this context. And I think there's a lot of lessons for every other context around the country.
Yeah, correct, Pat. I suppose when the EIP project comes back, or whether it's in place now, everything comes back to regulation. Whether you're a farmer or whether you're a house, there's regulations there in place, but implementing those regulations going forward will be the main focus.
Okay, there's a few questions coming in relation to the kind of supports that were there for the kind of capital, as opposed, you talked, I suppose, about the ongoing payment to farmers, but the support that was there for capital for farmers and maybe for others in the community in relation to septic tanks. Sorry,
actually, during that slide there, all right, we discussed about the different measures that were in place. How our EIP project worked was we were able to award or do a results-based reward payment, and that was an annual payment. So that's where that farmer would have sat. So whether it was 0 to 4,000 euros, but on the capital works, on the water protection improvement works, the EIP set aside a significant amount of funding for measures, whether it was new water trucks, fencing. So how we done this was by following the TAMs, the reference costs. We were able to distinguish how much that farmer was able to draw down, and it worked out at around 50% of the costs for capital, so for material. But we paid that farmer for 100% of his time. So his own labor he was fully paid, and that was based back on the reference costs. Your own machinery costs, they were at 50% as well. But there was a number of measures there, like for a farmer maybe to drop a nutrient management plan, we were able to adopt a 70% because we saw the importance of this. So we were able to give a 70% grant to the cost of that. Even TAMS applications, some farmers give in TAMS applications, and we're able to grant 70% back to the farmer on that. The septic tank side of things, there is a grant out there for septic tanks. Some septic tanks that were registered in 2013, they are eligible for a 5,000 euro grant to upgrade their system. But the most important thing is that they have to be registered in 2013, and maybe look at, if things start moving forward, that they might drop this condition and move that 2013 reference year forward. And the means testing is also, that's been done away with, so incomes don't come into it.
Okay, no, that's pretty clear. In terms of the testing, you showed the water, the Q values at various points. Was there analysis done at points of the river in relation to the fecal contamination or the loading of bacteria?
So we monitored for E. coli and enterococci, and I think maybe where you're going with this question was there any serotyping?
Well, that's the next question. Yeah,
was it human? was it human or was it animal? We didn't. We're actually looking into this. We've during a training course there during the week, we've just acknowledged that there is a person in UCD that can carry out this, but it's very much on the books. But I think the message that where the communication come from, she said 98% of the contamination is actually animal, 2% was human. But it does, I think they can actually zerotype and can pinpoint it back to whether it's a bird or a bovine, that type of thing. So it's an interesting development, and we are looking into it.
Okay. Noel, a good few questions starting to come in there. You're on mute still, Noel.
Yeah, that's fatal flaw, isn't it? Or mistake. Sorry about that. So, Eoin, well done on the project. It's a great example of collaboration and working together. So, well done on that. And I suppose maybe a question that came in there. Just how did farmers react to the results-based payment type structure that you had? It was obviously a new enough innovation, and in around the yards and the payment structure. How did they react to it? Were they positive towards it, or did they find it difficult? Or
I think a lot of farmers saw it as a positive way forward. I suppose it wasn't just about because you're a large dairy farm that you were hitting that high mark. We had a number of farmers that maybe hit the €4,000. But I think there was a good bit of positivity about the annual payment, and I think it was about getting the message across in relation to if we can get this watercourse fenced, like we will see an increase of €1,000 in the annual payment, So I think based on a lot of the other EIP projects, it's a generous payment for what was out there, for what works needed to be done. But a lot of farmers were certainly delighted with the increase in the payment. That you weren't stuck on maybe €2,000, that you could get up to that 3,000 or 4,000 euros.
Okay, good. And I suppose just another question there is around, you give an indication of what farmers had joined the program. And a question I often get asked in the ASSAP program is age an influence or determination of who's more likely to join it? Are older farmers more likely than younger farmers? And I'd just be interested in your thoughts on what was the kind of the barriers maybe to farmers taking up the opportunity to join the program.
Yeah, age didn't really come into it. No, it was. I went to college with some of the farmers down there, so I won't say I'm a young. I'm young, but I'm thereabouts. But we had a number of farmers in Young Farmer Scheme come into it, and that stretched right up to even one of our farmers is retiring this year, so it wasn't an influence, but it was really about getting that simple message across to them, of how it works, regardless of age. But yeah, we had a number of young farmers that drove on with it.
Good. And there's just a kind of more technical question here the question is that in parts of Wexford, there's a project going on where septic tanks, the percolation area, are reed water filter beds, and apparently they are working quite well. And the question is there discussions on this to expand that out, or what's the findings on it, or do you know anything about it?
Say that again, Noel, sorry.
So there's
filtration, is it?
Yeah, these reed water filtration beds. So as opposed to your typical soil-based polishing filter, it's a reed water-based polishing filter.
Yeah, I will say I wouldn't be straight into the septic tank inspections. What I probably would say about them type of wetland systems, the soil type that's the main driver between the wetland system as a secondary treatment system. If you're not on the right soil type, it's not going to work.
Okay. And I'll just give another one there. In one around uptake of buffer zones, and you know, how did you find the uptake in that, and how did you encourage farmers to take up? Like as you said, you had it wasn't the 5, it was the 10-meter, you know, all year round. And the question is, how did you encourage farmers to take that on? Because another project is not having as much success maybe as yourselves, and just wondering around that.
It probably came back to the PPZ survey. Probably farmers adhering to it more so than anything. I think the buffer zones, well, we'll talk about arable grass margins. The first farmer I went to, we discussed the right measure in the right place, and the first place he pointed at was the same place I was thinking of, and he went and sowed a 4-meter arable grass margin. I didn't want it the whole way along that field. He planted 550 meters, but he went and done it. So it was a big positive. In relation to the 5 and 10 meter, I never really had any problems with farmers. They'll adhere to it all year round. There probably are a number of farmers that will say to you, look, probably 5 meters is enough there, is it? But we never had any major issue. You know, I think probably it came back to the annual payment and that reward. It wasn't, it wasn't going to not have a knock-on effect, but like if we showed the results of maybe, you know, look at staying back to 5 meters, like, you know, at that extra 5 meters, that was probably the biggest discussion. But when farmers realised not what 5 meters was, but what it meant to their local water environment, then they kind of they settled on the 10, all right.
And of course, you had very frequent water monitoring as well, so you could probably link the two together very, very closely.
Yeah, most of our water monitoring points, between them, there was probably only 4 farmers between each monitoring point. So it was good to share the water quality results as a group more so than anything, because that's how you get the message across. That's how you get the discussion going as well.
Noel, there's a few questions coming in there in relation to the physical measures, the sediment traps, etc., that you put in place. What has been the experience with those? You're kind of early adopters in relation to those type of measures. And what kind of experience have you had with, I suppose, the impact of them and the ongoing maintenance of them?
It's early days, Pat.
Yeah.
Most of them, some of them were in 2019. There was some of them put in 2020, but then there was some farmers that when we saw the NAP changes come in, then they had to do them then. But it is early days. But from monitoring 2 of them, which one is off a farmyard to a laneway, we are finding quite an amount of fine sediment in these, and to the 3 to 4 inches per year. That's what we're looking at. There's another monitoring sediment trap that we look at probably on every fortnight, maybe every 3 weeks. And again, it's the exact same story. It's only serving 350 meters of roadway. And we are looking at the 3 inches, 75 mil of fine sediment. I think the thing with sediment traps is to try and get, I suppose, the right size sediment trap that'll serve it. And that's what we really learned. If it's too small, it's not going to work. And a farmer doesn't want to be down there every 3-4 months to clean sediment out. So I think the longer and narrower you have it, the better. It's not a big area. Most of our sediment traps they're all under 12 meters by 5 meters. And we do plant trees on the banks of them as well to create that kind of more future-proofing, I suppose, of these.
Okay. Looking at, or do you look at groundwater, and is there any issues for the water abstraction for the village of Duncannon, or is that within? Is that water abstracted within the area?
The current drinking water is taken from Taylorstown, so it's probably about 8 kilometers away. It's a surface water intake. But we have monitored groundwater wells in the area. We'd have very little bacterial influences there. We would see nitrates as an issue, but only on a very random basis. We haven't taken a whole lot of groundwater samples yet. We only usually take 2 a year anyway, of different catchments or different areas around the catchment.
Maybe I'll jump in there, Pat, with one.
Yeah,
I suppose my ears pricked up when you mentioned the text alert system that you had, and maybe would you just maybe explain a little bit more on how that was set up and how you run it?
Yeah, so the text alert system, it occurs on both a text message delivery from my own phone, that is. So it actually the responsibility comes back to me. So I'm constantly looking at 2 weather apps there, AccuWeather and WindGuru is the other one. We use WindGuru because WindGuru is an app that's used on a lot of windsurfing areas, and we do have kite surfing down there. So that's why it's quite accurate. But again, the responsibility comes back to me, and that message is sent out, has to be sent out, obvious enough, within 3 days before heavy rainfall. That's the minimum timeline we have. And we also get them out through the WhatsApp group. So as I said, going forward, the future of that text alert system, hopefully we can get somebody to take over that, like, you know, continue, because it is an important, it is a major point, like, you know, especially when it comes to the shoulders of the year for slurry spreading. But it does come back to the right amount in the right place at the right time for slurry spreading, and trying to get farmers to focus more their application of slurry on the front end of the year, I suppose.
Yeah, and like I suppose the follow-on question there is, you know, we'll say the regulations say 48 hours within 48 hours of heavy rainfall forecast, but obviously you're given an extra 24 on top of that. So, you know, and then with the 5 or the 10 meter, and obviously you're doing your regular water quality sampling as well. So can you see on the ground, and obviously the results that you have there, and maybe you know the answer to the question, but can you see on the ground how this is the 3 or 4 little bits together are actually having a positive impact on water quality?
Yeah, we do, and we only saw recently there, we sampled Monday and we had heavy showers. There was a text message sent out the Friday beforehand about rainfall events. It wasn't a heavy rainfall event, but still in all, I saw an improvement on the day sampling. That it was just that water was clearer. We had our 10 meter buffer in place as well. So the measure is only kind of, I suppose, 12 to 18 months up and running. So probably at the back end of this year that we will start to see a bigger improvement as well, like in the bacterial, another improvement, I guess.
Yeah, that's good.
Just a question there, is there any testing being done for pesticides in surface or groundwater, or is that something you've done? It's usually only done for drinking water anyway.
Yeah, the EIP project doesn't, we don't monitor for pesticides. The local authority water services here, they do carry out a number of monitoring points around the county, all right.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions coming in about your, and I know this is going to be difficult to answer, about the current status of the bathing water and where you're going with that, and what your vision, I suppose, for the next number of years are to try and get that from where it is now back up to a blue flag.
Yeah, my vision is probably a lot different than others. But I guess there's a few things to remember here, right? As I said at the start, the EIP project was focusing on the 2 streams that flowed onto Duncannon Beach. Duncannon Beach is part of Waterford Harbour Estuary. So I guess in hindsight, what we're looking at is we're looking at several different local authorities to maybe look at approaching water quality maybe in the future as an EIP project along the estuaries of the Suir, the Nore and the Barrow. That would be my vision, I suppose, going forward in the next 5 years. But even just getting word out and to these local authorities, sharing our experience with the environment sections in these local authorities, I think that's probably a good start to this. But it has, look at, I won't say heads have dropped since we heard that 2021 was gone to sufficient again. As I said, these things, bathing water quality is a 3-year average, and this is what Teagasc sets it at. But we have to remember Duncannon Beach is not like Cairn Beach or St Helens or Curracloe. It's part of an estuary, so you have multiple pressures. You've tidal influences there as well. So I won't say it's going to be difficult, but I think it's going to be work in progress over the next couple of years to try and jump back up to good and up to excellent. Monday's sample was very excellent. There was 0 levels of bacterial in E. coli and enterococci found in our first sample. So let's hope, let's keep the fingers crossed that that's the way it goes.
A question there coming in about the potential impact of the bringing together of people in this project on other community initiatives and even other initiatives with the local authorities. Has there been, I suppose, a dividend in that area?
There has. Even communicating between the Tidy Towns groups, we've Ramsgrange Tidy Towns, we've Duncannon Village Renewal, and we have Duncannon Tidy Towns. Bringing together those groups as a whole, as even with a group of farmers, we found that just that communication, that collaboration has made a difference, you know, because at the end of the day, they'll start talking in the group fairly fast, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to cut out I suppose, the finger pointing more so than anything with each other. But we have, like, even starting with the local schools, that type of thing, it's just about getting the message across.
Maybe I'll jump in there. There's just a question, I suppose, maybe looking for your opinion on you're probably well aware of the current situation with regards to cost of fertilizer and inflation and all that. And the question is, you know, will farmers go back to the old ways of spreading and impacting on water quality and runoff, etc. You know, which maybe undo. So that's I suppose looking for your opinion or your thoughts on how farmers will react to the current increase in fertilizer prices and inflation and so on, and will there be a slip back to the old ways?
The farmers' reaction, that's not good. That's for sure. Paying over €1,000 a tonne now for urea, but it does create a sense of awareness of the value of what sits on their farm, the value of that slurry, whether it's €50 per 1,000 gallons, whether it's 16, 17 euros per tonne of farmyard manure. Will farmers go back to their old way? I don't think so. I think farmers are, especially in the EIP catchment, they are trying to cut down on fertilizer use, and it's easily done. And like what we're trying to get across and the advisors are trying to get across in the catchment is, like, even by reseeding, even by liming, clover incorporation, those type of messages. Farmers are becoming more aware that they can still grow more grass, they can still get that crop by just looking after their soil. And there's a good message going out, like, you know, look after the soil and it'll look after you. But I don't think farmers are, it's my own opinion, I don't think farmers are going to go back to the old way. They're going to be a lot more careful with fertilizer use. They're adopting to new technologies on, like, you know, continuously through GPS, through I suppose new fertilizer spreaders. They're also looking at their nutrient efficiency as well. Each year, like, you know, what they're able to get, what's their return on a dry matter basis as well, compared to how much chemical fertilizer they're putting out. But we've had a lot of farmers looking over the last number of months, like, you know, they're not holding back on slurry applications, but they're thinking carefully of where they're putting it, and that comes back to the crucial element of the measure of the NMP maps that's provided to them.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a follow-on question to that, like, is around the nitrate losses in the catchment. I don't know what the levels are on it. You kind of focused on the E. coli and the pathogens, but is that a problem in the estuary, and how is there an appetite, you think, among farmers to maybe tackle that as well?
We do. We don't just monitor for E. coli and enterococci on the bacterial side. We measure for ammonia, orthophosphates, nitrates, BOD, conductivity, pH, temperature. There's a range of parameters there we do. And nitrates is an issue. We are on free draining soils. It's an issue for the whole southeast. You can draw the pen between Dublin and Cork, and it still is a major issue. As for, is it an issue for a bathing water status? It's not. We have to remember that bathing water focuses on E. coli and enterococci level. At the end of the day, that's what's going to close your beach. That's what's going to determine whether you get your blue flag back in 3 or 4 years. But it comes back to the previous question, all right, like, you know, nitrates is an issue in the catchment. That message is getting across to farmers that, look, we're not going the right road. It might take us 5 or 10 years, maybe less, to lower our nitrates. We have seen some sampling points reducing NO3 levels through the monitoring, like, you know, by monitoring 6 times a year. So we're not aware that we don't. One thing we don't look at is how much. We don't ask farmers for records or anything like that, like, you know, but we do put a careful emphasis on nutrient, chemical, nitrogen use throughout the year, and going forward then as well, if farmers are forward buying or anything like that.
Okay, Matt?
Okay, I think we're time is catching up on us. Listen, I'd like to take the opportunity to thank Eoin for a great presentation. I think a lot of people appreciating what he's saying, and I think it gives us a lot of food for thought in terms of how we approach these and similar issues right around the country. And I think the learning from your EIP is really important. So thanks very much for coming on and talking to us today. And I suppose the ad for anybody who is looking for somewhere nice to go and over the next couple of weekends, if the weather is fine, it's a wonderful place to go. Some great walks, some great seafood down there. I've certainly enjoyed a number of visits down there in the last short while. A lovely place. So thanks very much, Eoin.
Thanks very much, Pat. And yeah, Wexford has some great beaches, so do get to visit in during the summer.
Then just going on to next week. Next week we will be joined by Dr. Fiona McGovern, Dr. Noreen McHugh, and Jonathan Heron, and their talk is on measuring methane in Irish sheep systems. What's their carbon footprint? And I suppose we do have a huge focus on ruminants when it comes to our greenhouse gas emissions. A lot of talk in terms of dairy and beef systems, but there's been a lot less talk over the years about the impact of our sheep systems and what we can do to mitigate those. So it's an interesting topic. So with that, I'll just thank our production team of Andy Boland and Yvonne Marr, and we'll see you again next week. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks very much.